It's no surprise that One Punch Man and My Hero Academia share many similarities, yet they couldn't be more different in how they approach their stories. My Hero Academia takes a careful, almost methodical approach to shaping the heroes of the future, while in One Punch Man, becoming a hero is as simple as passing an exam. The villains in My Hero Academia often have deep motives and compelling reasons for their actions, whereas One Punch Man's monsters are mostly sadistic creatures driven by selfish desires. Yet, both worlds boast incredibly powerful heroes who constantly battle threats to humanity. So what happens when One Punch Man's strongest heroes face off against My Hero Academia's top tier pros? How would their abilities clash, and who would be the last group standing? But before that, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell for more of these One Punch Man videos. Thank you. When talking about My Hero Academia's pro heroes, there exists approximately 73 who are still currently active, with the last bonus chapter at least clarifying the current top 5 heroes, leaving the other 5 open to speculations. Chapter 431 can still allow you to fill the gaps, leaving us with a placement list that can look like this. However, we're not going to choose based on this, since the top 12 contains some really weak heroes, but rather pick the strongest heroes presented in the story, since the S-class heroes, regardless of their order, are the strongest heroes excluding Saitama. So to make this a fair fight, the heroes that would be included in this video are the following: Lemillion, Star and Stripe, Shoto, Mount Lady, Deku, Bakugo, All Might, Endeavor, Eraserhead, Red Riot, Miracle, Ingenium, Snipe, and Best Genius. So how strong is the My Hero Academia verse? You see, before the final arc and some events that happened prior, the community relied on questionable movies feats that placed characters at multi-continental levels, but this has been actually substantiated by a rather recent feat performed by Deku himself, where he exerted 42 petatons of TNT to completely cripple Shigaraki. This resulted in altering the weather from Japan to America, with shockwaves felt across the ocean. The story, on the other hand, still considers this feat a little stronger than what All Might can do, which certainly makes both of them comparable in terms of attack potency and durability. However, other characters in the series surprisingly somehow scale to this level of power. Anybody that can hurt Shigaraki or fight those who can compete with him are by default placed on this tier of strength, which sometimes is actually pretty weird. All I can say is that the power scaling, especially in the last arcs, was just all over the place. Take Endeavor for example, being able to straight up hurt Shigaraki on numerous times, who was straight up compared to Prime All Might in terms of physical strength, competing with high-end Nomu, who was stated to being stronger than USG Nomu that was made specifically to fight All Might, which means Endeavor somehow scales to the multi-continental ranges of attack potency, not really the same output as Deku, yet somehow still comparable. But here's where stuff gets completely weird for me. You see, Dabi's quirk was stated to be more powerful than Endeavor's Hell Flame on several occasions. Same Dabi who evenly clashed with Blue Flame's Ice Blight that Mount Lady was able to break, so Mount Lady can probably at least slightly hurt Shigaraki, which makes her now approach the continental tiers. Furthermore, Shoto and Bakugo are considered to be pretty relative, seeing as one was able to match with Dabi and the other left a burn mark on complete Shigaraki. But being able to perform these feats with their quirks doesn't necessarily mean they would have the same physical strength or durability as the characters they're able to hurt. It kinda solidifies them being on the same tier of power in terms of their abilities, since they were taking punishment from Dark Might. And since Dark Might is capable of hurting Deku, who's multi-continental, that can only mean the others are multi-continental too. So does that mean Kiryu Gandini is also multi-continental for withstanding punishments from Dark Might? You gotta agree that it surely sounds very questionable. But nonetheless, Miracle, Star and Stripes, and Best Genius has also been shown to withstand attacks from full-powered Shigaraki, so they should at least be somehow relative to the previous characters. As for the rest of the heroes, Lemillion, Eraserhead, Red Riot, Ingenium, and Snipe are at best multi-city block characters, with possessing great abilities that still makes them very useful despite not being that strong. I mean, Mario is literally the #1 hero, but physically way inferior to a lot of characters. Now when it comes to speed, similar to One Punch Man, there has been multiple feats of characters straight up dodging lasers confirmed to be light itself. Depends on the multiplier of speeds you wanna give these characters, they should at least be on the faster than light to faster than light light plus meta. However, there recently has been a huge statement from the fanbook revealing All Might's travel speed to only being Mach 10, which completely contradicts in-show scaling. But I'd say there should be no reason to assume the comparability of travel and combat speed in My Hero Academia verse, as we've actually been aware of this, seeing how Ida and Shoto broke the sound barrier that was considered impressive in the My Hero Academia verse. So to be frankly honest, it's nothing really new to the My Hero Academia community, which means we'll still stick with the faster than light meta rather than Mach 10 that wouldn't make any sense. Now, when it comes to their abilities, I find it fit to talk about them in the how would it go section, assuming everybody should at least have a basic understanding of what they can do. And with all of this being said, can these My Hero Academia Pro heroes defeat the One Punch Man's S-class heroes? In an organization of over 600 heroes, only 17 of them stand apart as anomalies, considered as individuals who are too powerful to be classified among ordinary heroes. However, we'd only be using 14 of them in this video to match the numbers of My Hero Academia's top pros. These heroes are Tatsumaki, Silver Fang, Atomic Samurai, Zombie Man, Child Emperor, Pig God, Darkshine, Tank Top Master, Puri Puri Prisoner, Genos, Flashy Flash, Metal Bat, and last but not least, Blast. Now, in order to understand how strong these heroes are, I'll be taking a different approach to estimate their strength or power level, which follows something similar to the way My Hero Academia heroes are being scaled just to make this whole matchup completely fair. We'd be using Satoru's one-shot tier method, and I'll be leaving a link to his video in the description down below. You should go and check it out. So, narratively speaking, Sage Centipede and Orochi should at least be on the multi-continental plus to small planetary tiers of strength. This actually connects to Garu, who prior fought Silver Fang and went up against Flashy Flash and Platinum S. Ended up one-shotting Platinum S when before they were certainly relative. Also managed to damage Sage Centipede and evolved enough to one-shot him right after. You see, if we're being generous and say that Garu grew 3 one-shot tiers stronger from when he was fighting Bang, then that means that Flash and Bang should be 562 times weaker than Sage Centipede, which means if you rely on the highball estimation of these monsters, then Flashy Flash and Bang should at least be multi-continental. However, if you wanna go with the lowball estimation, then both of them would still be continental. Sunblade Atomic Samurai on a narrative standpoint shouldn't really be that much weaker than Awakened Breath Bang, which means by extension he could also have multi to continental levels of strength. But if you feel like he should be a tier lower, it's still perfectly fine. Top tiers like 10 Seconds Genos and Pumped Up Metal Bat, however, would scale directly to Sage Centipede and Psycho Orochi in terms of strength, being able to hurt, damage, or compete with them at some extent, solidly making them multi-continental plus. But it's still very important to note that Genos' durability doesn't really scale to this, since we've seen him getting damaged by Black S and other cadres, so this is only considered as a destructive feat, completely different than attack potency and durability. Tatsumaki, on the other hand, is straight up described as a monster by a dragon or higher being who is on the small planetary ranges of power, which makes Tatsumaki either small planetary or straight up planetary herself. Which brings us to the mid-tier heroes such as Darkshine, Child Emperor, and Puri Puri Prisoner, who all should at least be ranging from mountain level to island level of AP, since Darkshine in the VGS defeated Carnage Kabuto, who physically scales above Transformed Vaccine Man. This is important since base Vaccine Man was able to casually exert powers relative to that of 86 megatons of TNT, making him city level plus. And according to the data book, his second form or transformation drastically increases his fighting strength, so if we interpret drastically as getting him to a one-shot tier above his previous self, then he would be at least mountain level, which is something that a lot of dragon level monsters can certainly scale to on a regular basis. And if we say that Carnage Kabuto is only 2 times stronger than Transformed Vaccine Man, then that would make him island level in terms of strength and still got defeated by Darkshine. Darkshine after wanted to fight a monster who is stronger than Carnage Kabuto, implying that he wasn't really going all out. However, Child Emperor and Puri Puri Prisoner doesn't necessarily scale to this, but should at least be mountain level, which leaves us with Zombie Man, Tank Top Master, and Pig God, who all should scale to or above demon level monsters that can withstand large town level of firepower produced by Genos, which makes them range from town plus to city level of attack potency. And I don't think I should should even talk about Blast at this point, as everybody is aware that he sits on a completely different realm. Now, when it comes to how fast these characters can react and fight in One Punch Man, there exist various calcs depicting nerfed Deep Sea King and Sonic moving at least at massively hypersonic plus speeds. And not only did characters like early Genos and Puri Puri Prisoner one-shot this monster or others on that level, they also have been fighting others who are narratively much stronger and faster. However, within the realm of demons, another fellow monster called Awakened Cockroach stated that he can indeed react and dodge at the speed of light. This would not be far-fetched since characters has been seen dodging lasers that were confirmed to have the properties of light. So with this logic, many characters would upscale to this and would be in the realm of faster than light speeds, with the high tier heroes such as Flashy Flash obviously operating at a much higher level. This is surprisingly the same meta of speed the My Hero Academia verse follows, which involves lasers and things of that nature. So we're kinda forced to use a similar approach when talking about One Punch Man characters regarding speed. But nonetheless, can the S-class heroes overcome the best heroes in My Hero Academia? Now, My Hero Academia heroes would certainly be a force to be reckoned with in the One Punch Man verse. They're really accustomed to fight against any type of ability and taught to be vigilant in how to deal with tough situations. Also, in the sense of being heroes, truth be told, they are much better than most of the S-class heroes who are generally always prideful and only care about power and fame. But this is not a video to discuss which heroes are better, but more so which are stronger. You see, if you start comparing both of their lower forces, it's pretty much safe to deduce that the S-class heroes would pretty much deal with them easily in a 1v1 situation. Puri Puri Prisoner, Tank Top Master, Zombie Man, and Bug God are generally above Eraserhead, Red Riot, Ingenium, and even Mario. These characters are multi-city block at best, getting carried by their abilities in their verse. Eraserhead's quirk is nearly useless against any of the S-class heroes since they would actually be considered quirkless, blessed with crazy physical strength. It's also very hard to argue that Aizawa would be able to nullify Zombie Man's regeneration since that ability on a biological level should be functioning on a completely different system. However, Mirio's ability is actually very hard to counter. It'd be extremely difficult for these S-class heroes to connect any attacks if we assume both of them are functioning on relative speed. But that's not really an issue since Mirio sadly lacks the attack potency to meaningfully harm the S-class heroes, similar to what happened against the Nomu. With that being said, you can say that the biggest problem they'd need to deal with is Zombie Man's regen ability. Bro even defeated a dragon level monster by exhausting him for days, so it'd be very logical to think that they would just eventually get tired from overexerting their quirks and end up getting defeated by Zombie Man. Which means when it comes to the lower forces of both parties, the S-class heroes would surely dominate. Now, when talking about the heavy hitters such as Deku, Prime All Might, Endeavor, and Star and Stripe, they would certainly be able to compete and defeat most of the S-class heroes. These guys are solidly multi-continental beings, with some of them possessing crazy abilities and hacks that would be extremely hard to counter. The only S-class heroes that can confidently deal with them are Metal Bat, 10 Seconds Genos, Tatsumaki, and possibly High Bolt Flash and Silver Fang. Tatsumaki is actually a default win condition since not only is she significantly stronger than any of them, but can twist their head before making any movement. Pumped up Metal Bat's strength can rival Deku and All Might, but they can still possibly overwhelm him before he actually peaks. Granted, that's assuming he wouldn't just level up faster with his fighting spirit, as the databook says that his strength could actually increase to infinity. Logically speaking, if Metal Bat has the same strength that allowed him to injure Sage Centipede, he'd also be able to severely damage these top tier pros. 10 Seconds Genos would be turned into pieces if any of these characters close the gap and get near him before he activates his trump card. But if he already shoots his true Spiral Incineration cannon, no character in My Hero Academia has the durability or the strength to withstand such force, which means it's a 50-50 situation. And Silver Fang would certainly be able to counter All Might's brute force with the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist. However, in Deku's case, he can still employ other stuff such as using Smoke Screen or restricting his movements with Black Whip. And since Gear Shift ignores the principle of inertia entirely, it can maybe disrupt Bang's technique. Endeavor can also use AoE kinds of attacks that would make Bang's ability completely useless, so Bang defeating these guys solely because of the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist is kinda very shaky. Not to mention Star and Stripes, if she learns their names and gets to touch them even once, it would basically be game over. Her New Order quirk is actually broken, and I don't think any of these heroes can escape from it if the conditions are fully met. Now, the rest of the top heroes such as Dynamite, Shoto, Best Genius, and Mount Lady actually possesses better attack potency than the rest of the S-class heroes. If Best Genius can restrict Gigantomachia, he'd surely be able to do the same thing to Darkshine. Shoto and Bakugo can hurt Shigaraki, so I'd reckon they'd be able to melt Brave Giant's armor. The only thing you can say about these characters is that maybe their durability doesn't scale to the amount of damage their quirk can produce, given that Genius can only restrict Machia but not be able to actually hurt him. It stands to reason that his physical stats don't really scale to that level, which means if Darkshine actually closes the distance, he'd be able to severely damage each one of them. Flashy Flash on the other hand should be able to cripple them if we assume they don't have that crazy level of durability, but if not, it'd still be a very competitive fight, with Flash still being favored to win due to his busted speed. Alright, now it's very important to note that these are just examples of the many possible 1v1 matchups. It actually stands to reason to say that My Hero Academia has more heroes who are multi-continentally strong in comparison to the S-class heroes. So in terms of 1v1 matchups, you can argue that they would have more winners on their side. However, in terms of a battle royale where like everybody fights everybody, 3 characters from the S-class heroes are much stronger than any character from My Hero Academia, and that's not even including the #1 hero Blast. But nonetheless, you can still argue that this would still be very close, since abilities such as New Order and Mirio's quirk can effectively make a change in chaotic events, and somebody like Best Genius can restrict a lot of S-class heroes. But again, as I said before, Tatsumaki, if bloodlusted, can end the fight before it even starts. Unless you want to argue that Star and Stripe, after she gets hit by telekinesis energy, can just order it to stop working. If she actually can do this, then surely this would be very close. But nonetheless, if the #1 hero makes an appearance, without a shadow of a doubt, the entire My Hero Academia verse would be totally bodied. Nothing and absolutely nothing can be done to stop him from annihilating each and every one of them, which ultimately means if Blast is not included, this can be very close, but if he is included, this sadly ends up in a one-sided massacre.